I wonder as we read that passage from the Gospels which parts of it struck you. If you were one of the disciples alongside Jesus and then sent out by him, how would you have been feeling? Were you inspired by his teaching and preaching? Were you encouraged by the good news of the kingdom? Were you amazed by him healing every sickness and disease? Were you moved by his compassion? When he looked at you and said, "You have authority to do the same," were you a bit overwhelmed? Having heard the very end of Matthew's Gospel last week on Trinity Sunday, we've rewound to a fairly early point in Jesus' ministry. In church terms, that's because we're now back into ordinary time. We celebrated Easter and Jesus risen from the dead. We've contemplated his return to heaven in the Ascension. We've rejoiced at the coming of the Spirit and gazed into the mystery of God, the Holy Trinity. That gives us the overarching shape for trying to root our understanding of God. Within that, we come to look in more detail at the ministry of Jesus. In the church's calendar, we'll be doing that until we come to Advent. So set the scene on this. It is early in Jesus' ministry. The disciples have not been following him for that long. Indeed, it's earlier in chapter 9 that Matthew himself is called. Everything is quite new for them, and they're still trying to get their heads round it. For us who know the rest of the story, we might say, just you wait. You ain't seen nothing yet. And while it's all very new, he sends them out to do pretty much what he has been doing. I think I'd be swallowing hard and thinking, it's easy for you to say that, Jesus. I'm struck by his instruction to go only to the house of Israel. Don't go to the Gentiles, non-Jews in other words, and don't go to the Samaritans. The Samaritans worshipped God, but in a different way, and were generally ostracised. Hence the story of the Good Samaritan, because no one would think a Samaritan would do anything good. Go just to what you know. That would be an easy instruction to misuse. Jesus is not saying the good news is only for people from the same background as his disciples. Apart from anything else, we know that from last week's Gospel when he sends them to all the nations. As I reflect on this in the context of our ongoing need to affirm that Black Lives Matter, I find it a difficult text. Texts like this have too often been misused by white Christians to imagine that we own the good news or that we can govern it. Slave owners restricted access by enslaved people to the Bible, or at least to the parts that spoke of freedom, justice and overthrowing the powerful, because they feared what that message would do. But in hearing it again today, I'm also challenged that people like me have a job to do in our own community. We need to confront and deal with that history and with its current consequences. Racism is wrong. Racism with religious justification feels even worse to me. We cannot, though, begin from anywhere other than where we are. These disciples were in the early days of following Jesus, and I wonder if it was a concession that he let them, for the moment, stay in their comfort zones at least a little bit. They are learning to follow where he leads and to do what he does. As their lives unfold, they will do even greater things, as Jesus tells them in John's Gospel. As we near the end of a term, and as some of you look towards leaving the university, you might be wondering what comes next. Where do you go? What do you do? Where will you find yourselves sent? I find great comfort in knowing that Jesus starts with us where we are, and that Jesus can empathise with how daunted we might feel. It's okay not to do everything all at once, but the absolute call to us all is to set our feet in the direction of the good news and to start walking, to fix our eyes on the love and mercy and justice of God. We may not get there today, or tomorrow, or this year, but the kingdom is coming, and nothing can stop that. Amen.